Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Makbool with you at Ptv World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at a very important story concerning Pakistan's fight against terrorism. And this is extremely important given the current scenario and situation, particularly in KP and Balochistan. We also know that intelligence-based operation and a neutralization campaign has been launched with respect to the Pak-Afghan border, which is something that happened on the night of the 7th and 8th, where a number of terrorists tried to infiltrate the border. And so the security personnel of Pakistan have been thwarting the enemy, and the number has risen to more than 50. And this is something, of course, very, very important in terms of the way that this needs to be tackled with and handled. And this is something that the armed forces of Pakistan is dealing with currently as we speak. Also, there is a lot of concern in terms of what is going on at the Pak-Afghan border, what happens in Balochistan and KP with regards to the terrorist organizations and the terrorist elements that exist in the region, and the way that they're moving forward and increasing the terrorist attacks in the country. And while, of course, the borders are being secured by the armed forces personnel, we also know that internationally also there is increasing recognition of what is going on inside Pakistan, with the United States also putting the BLA and the Majid Brigade on the foreign terrorist organizations list. And this is, of course, something very, very important in the ways that that's going to then move the elements internationally also against these terrorist organizations within the country, and the way that Pakistan is able to respond to them. What will be the international cooperation in this regard, however, remains to be seen. But there is a lot of effort that needs to be done at home and, of course, across the border to prevent these attacks and to protect our citizens. And so we're going to be taking a look at what sort of reevaluation of our own approaches inside the country is needed, and what sort of partnerships and collaborations are needed in terms of defense cooperation and anti-terrorism cooperation. And then, of course, particularly in terms of the elements coming in from countries like Afghanistan and India. That is going to be our focus in the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studio, I'm joined by senior analyst Farooq Patafi and Raja Faisal. We've also been joined online by Air Commodore retired Mr. Khalid Chishti. Thank you very much for joining us and being a part of the discussion. And Chishti Saab, I'm going to start with you because I want your take on what is going on at the border at the moment, where we know that these intelligence-based operations are being carried out against those that try to infiltrate the Pak-Afghan border. And of course, we're right now, of course, on the 12th of August, and we have preparations going on with regards to Independence Day of Pakistan, day after tomorrow. And this is something very, very important to the protection of Pakistan's citizens and the motherland, that we're able to wipe out this menace of terrorism. And while, of course, we have full confidence in the preparedness of our armed forces, I want your take on what is going on currently at the Pak-Afghan border and what you think needs to be done with regards to treating these terrorist organizations.
Thank you, Sana, for having me in your program. Needless to say that it is the duty of the armed forces to not only deal with the external threat of Pakistan, but also internally we need to do everything possible which should be done to nullify the nefarious designs of our enemies. Since May 2025, we already know that the Indians got frustrated even more by not having achieved their military objectives through the arms and the confrontation. They are probably left with no other option but to go for a proxy war. And this was expected. And whenever I was there on the television interviews, I used to say that the Indians have no more options except to go for their designs to do it in a proxy, on the proxy field. However, it's an ongoing battle because these terrorist organizations are funded by no less than India, which has a huge economy. They have huge infrastructure in our bordering neighboring countries on the western side, Iran and Afghanistan. So it's a continuous effort. You cannot call it one-time operation, or you cannot. It's an ongoing thing for many, many decades now, and it's almost new normal for us. However, having seen the frustration that the Indians faced and the continuous humiliation they are facing right now on the diplomatic front, also they are feeling isolated. They're feeling that no one is hearing them as they were used to it. They used to nullify Pakistan, all diplomatic efforts in the past, but now Pakistan has become more relevant every passing day. So that's probably caused more frustration in the minds and hearts of those leaders. So they are left with no other option but to do this. What I'm trying to reach home is that armed forces in particular, the intelligence based through even from the air, Pakistan is very potent now as compared to what it was in the past, to not only observe, rather neutralize those sabotage activities well in time, So inshallah, we will continue to do that, and you will see in coming days these operations will become more and more effective because we are not only watching them from the ground, but we're also watching them from the air, and they, they will be as and when they try to meet any such design, they will be taken out with the course of time.
Absolutely. And Shishita, with reference to what we have seen in terms of making sure that the world also recognizes that this is an issue, there is, of course, a lot of elements that are concerning coming in from safe havens in Afghanistan or spoiler elements in India. And so, what do you think is the international response, and what can Pakistan do more in terms of making sure that people around the world understand and cooperate with us on this front?
So now, incidentally, for last about 3 to 4 weeks, I am in US and Canada. I'm still in Canada and taking on the interviews, talks here with the intelligentsia, some media talks here and there. And I got a real pulse how misunderstood Pakistan was. Pakistan's point of view had probably not been projected positively in the past, or the world did not find us relevant in our efforts, whatever we were doing. But now the globe and the world politics have moved on. Now you see the American president talking against the Indian policies, criticizing them heavily. That is because the world has started to get used to the new truthfulness, the new honesty. The media is there, the satellite pictures are there, their digital footprints one leaves everywhere. So they are much aware of the Indian position now, what they used to be, and especially the Indians in the past have been exploiting their position uh, for while dealing with Russians, while dealing with Europe and UK, and of course America. And they have started to realize now that India has been capitalizing on the situation that because it is bigger, because it is mightier, because it is more rich, because it has better trade ties with these countries, so it has the right to bully the regional countries also. That's probably no more selling this time. Whenever I've met senators also here informally, because whenever I gave luckily the audience included those people, and they asked me, even the Kashmir issue was explained to them first time ever. They thought that it's just a dispute. So when I explained how unjustifiably those people have been denied the self-determination, then they do realize that the world needs to look at the truth and nothing but the truth now. And things could change positively, inshallah, in the coming times for Pakistan.
That is, of course, the hope. Farooq, I want your take on this too, because we've seen, as I mentioned earlier, also the way that the US has responded now with
Yeah.
recognizing PLA. And so this is important, especially in terms of how it opens avenues for international collaboration. But what can really be the way forward on that front for Pakistan?
Right, Sena, first of all, as you pointed out, that one should congratulate government of Pakistan and also thank the U.S. government for acknowledging that BLA is a foreign terrorist organization, and then also putting Majid Brigade in the category of international terrorist outfit. I think it is a huge deal because we know in Pakistan it is known as Fitna Hindustan, and these elements essentially are being sponsored by India. So that essentially shows that the world is cognizant of whatever is going on within Pakistan and how foreign elements are actually supporting such elements, right? So with this, we can of course focus on the money, the sources to these organizations, and we can expose that also. Now, the question at this moment is, while we have accomplished a lot, there seems to be permanent destabilizing factors in the region. On one side is India, especially as Chishti Saab actually pointed out that India is a bad loser. We have now seen it, and because of that, they perpetually keep on renegotiating, relitigating the fight that we had with them, and they want to actually inflict as much pain as possible. So their punters, their pundits very clearly keep on saying on television that we need to use grey zone activities against Pakistan. What does that mean? It means sponsoring such elements. So we need to expose that also, and we have to fight back, particularly taking out all these outfits one by one. I think that IBOs are being conducted, and we have seen that our armed forces are doing whatever was needed to be done. But where is the civilian administration, particularly in the areas where terrorism has been quite effective in harming our people. I think that we repeatedly keep on going to the question of reintegration of FATA or ex-FATA, and we keep on talking about the pledges that were made to actually uplift those regions so that such elements cannot find any kind of support there. Similarly, in Balochistan also, we still have this AB areas. They need to be taken care of as well. Because eventually we need to have one standard of governance everywhere, right? So with that, and of course hardening the border, we will be able to do a lot, as I pointed out, because of Operation Sindoor and Banyan Mansoor. We have seen quite an effective window of opportunity for Pakistan. Mansoor, yeah. Because of that, we have seen this opportunity that has been created, and we can benefit from that. The world is cognizant of what we have been going through. We still have to see how much we can come together to ensure that these things are done.
Absolutely. Faisal, your perspective on this too, given the fact that we know that there has been an operation that has been going on for a couple of days now, and we've seen similar operations in the past as well, and a number of terrorists have tried to infiltrate Pakistan, and this is important given the ways that we wanted to secure it initially. Also, multiple times this has been reiterated, and of course, the assurances have been demanded from the Afghanistan side as well. But unfortunately, this is a position that where we have to deal with a lot of these issues and threats inside our borders. And so I want your take on how we can engage with across the border cooperation as well, and whether or not, if that is something that we're not receiving, what should be our response?
Yeah, Sana, when we talk about how to, of course, get in touch with people who are across the border, especially I would say TTA sitting in Kabul, whether they know that somebody sitting in their own provinces like Kunnar, Nangarhar, Nuristan, all of these provinces that are next to the border, this is where all of these sanctuaries are. And I was going through, the Jirga when it concluded last week. What has been reported from there is that when Jirga people, they went in to meet with these miscreants in their hideout, they simply said that we can't do anything, we do agree with you, but final word would be coming from Afghanistan, because somebody with the name of Hafiz Gulbahar was sitting out there, and he was the one who was actually giving them directions. And I would fully agree with Chishti Saab when he said that after May 2025 war, after facing that humiliating defeat, India has doubled the price for any activity that is being carried out against Pakistan, be it BLA, BLF, TTP, ISKP. I have always been considering them factories of terror, and all of these factories of terror, their acts of terrorism, that is their product, and they are selling that product to the biggest bidder, and the biggest bidder has always been India. And right now they are even giving them so much money and helping them to employ more and more technology, and Ukraine style technology. I'm talking about the smaller drones. They have been using that in recent times, right after May 2025 war. I fully agree that India, of course, can't fight face to face with Pakistan when it comes to the eastern border. They are still engaging Pakistan with the double tactics on the western front. And when it comes to TTA sitting in Kabul, they have been ignoring this factor. Now the whole world knows that Hafiz Gulbahar is sitting out there, he's dictating his terms, he's dictating his own people, and telling them to carry on creating a havoc wherever they are. And all of this is happening right under the nose of Kabul. And if Kabul isn't doing anything, we should be considering Kabul to be accomplice to this menace. And if they are ready to do it, Pakistan can always extend a help in terms of air raids, in terms of drone attacks inside Afghanistan, but that requires a will, and that will can only be initiated from the other side, Kabul. And if they don't want to do it, we should always be considering them as a safe haven for the terrorists, and the very terrorists who are active in Pakistan.
Right. Chishti Saab, I want your perspective too, given the fact that when we take a look at what our strategies and resolve has been and what our approach has been, there is, of course, the National Action Plan. And this National Action Plan is extremely important, not just in terms of the operations, of course, that are being carried out, but also in terms of development and in terms of making sure that everybody on the local side, the tribal elders and the population and the people of Pakistan are something are things that we invest in, are things that we help develop and facilitate further, and we ensure that there are preventive mechanisms in place to not let exploitative elements use them in our favor, in their favor. And so, Chachisa, what is your take on how we have done so far on that front, and what it is that needs to be revised, if possible, or added on to ensure that there is foolproof security and there is a lot of engagement on the local front to help develop the country further?
I think, Sana, thank you. That's a very sorry. That's a very good question. The answer does not lie in the counterterrorism standalone operations or that strategy. The enemy can only carry out the proxy war in case they find some vacuum inside our obviously the population, territory, the infrastructure, wherever they find the vacuum, especially the polarization in the people and the people who have a discrimination beyond limits to have and have nots. So they exploit those people who have less against those who have more, and they find it easy. When the war of May 2025 ended, some people like you asked me, what's the way forward? I said, there is no option with Indians but to go for a proxy war. And they will only succeed in case we give them the vacuum and the space. And the vacuum and space only comes out in case the people are not happy, they are not finding the jobs, they are not finding the growth, they are not looking forward to any future for their children. Only then these people are exploited by these terrorist organizations, formally declared or undeclared. So we have to do two-pronged strategy, which is one is that meet them militarily or give them a heavy hand. On the other hand, we have to buy in the people from their hearts to support the development. They should have a faith and belief in the government of Pakistan and the governance and the leaders that they will look after the future of their children and develop the infrastructure accordingly. The government has done significant efforts, no doubt about it, but there is yet a large scale of activity or contribution still needs to be done, which should win the minds and hearts of those people who are sitting on the fence and watching which side should they go, either by compulsion or by choice. So we need to win the hearts and minds of the people to do more and more. Only then, sitting in the first world, why are people not bought so easily towards the terrorism? Where I am sitting, people are not sold out just like that because people are satisfied, they're happy, they believe in the governors, and obviously they trust their leaders. And this is what we all need to develop and kind of that kind of environment in Pakistan too.
Jishita, but with reference to developing this trust and faith that you're mentioning, it's important, of course, to understand where is it that this is missing and what needs to be done about it, because like you said, a lot of efforts have been made in place, but recently we've also seen a number of jirgas being held, particularly in KP, where tribal leaders also expressing, of course, their own concerns, and these people generationally also have unfortunately suffered at the hands of the terrorists, and because of that, of course, they really want this suffering to end. So do we, so do the armed forces and the state. But in terms of how we make them understand that this alignment is needed and that whatever operations are taking place or whatever actions are taking place are going to be in their favor, what do you think has been that missing link that needs to be further worked upon?
Sarah, when I teach in universities and somebody asks me what is the definition of the leader, and I say the big or the biggest responsibility of the leader, and I say the biggest responsibility of the leader is to create more leaders, which does not mean that you are trying to create more followers, which clearly means that the followers have the same conviction, the same inspiration, the same loyalty, and the same trust in the leadership. Only then you will have more leaders. When these anti-state elements come into action, what do they exploit? They tell those people that what is your stake with this politician or this government or this representative of yours who's enjoying all the perks and privileges, you are underprivileged, you are deprived. So the idea is to build that element of confidence and trust and an element of transparency. Whereas when I am as a leader, people should see me as their spokesperson, as a true representative, that whatever pains them, I am aware of it. Not only aware of it, will do utmost everything, obviously, to counter or get to the remedy of part of it. Unfortunately, that has been the disconnect in KPK and Balochistan more so as compared to the other provinces. And that is why you see the exploitation of the enemy becomes relatively easy for them to get reach out to those people, the disgruntled people who are disappointed from the government, who do not believe in their own leadership. That is why they find it easy to capitalize on those people and obviously take on them. So that's the biggest probably disconnect. We need to build that confidence. What is Jirga? Jirga is nothing but a sense of belonging, a sense of participation that you're giving to the people who are there. That my voice is being heard. These people are deciding what I want them to decide, and I have my representation or due voice being told or implemented. That's what Jirga is all about. This needs to be done at the province level and even bigger level.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Khalid Chishi Saab, for joining us and
Thank you.
sharing your views with us. Farouk, this is an important, of course, aspect in terms of what the people want and how we're able to provide them. And Chishi Saab mentioned the aspect of leadership. And while, of course, that has been something that we see both in the civil and military side, what is it, do you think, that needs to be added to that in terms of having that leadership trickle down to the local leaderships, such as the Jirgas or others, where the people are actually making that that connection or that sense of belonging, as Shishita was saying, or of being heard, for them to understand that this is something being done also in their favor.
Sense of ownership, you mean?
Sense
right?
of ownership.
Yeah. One tragedy that I keep on pointing out, because I've been extensively covering the war-torn areas, particularly, especially in the tribal areas or ex-FATA areas. That was the way Taliban or TTP actually came and took over those regions, and the way they slaughtered tribal elders. There used to be this humongous institution that was there, and there were only two elements of power. On one side was this jirga that used to be there. On the other side, there used to be one man called political agent in one agency who used to exercise all the powers, right? And with that, the government actually used to control those areas or manage those areas. But what happened was that while PA continued till the time these areas were not integrated into Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, we saw that TTP actually came and just slaughtered tribal elders. And unfortunately, at that time, because we were slow in sending our forces in that region, and it took us a little while, right? Especially I'm talking about early 2000s. At that time, that massacre was done. Then I actually kept on traveling, and one thing that I found, that places like Sadda in Kotam agency, where they used to have these caves, but outside those caves they would have not only transmitters, but also power supplies and meters also, and they would get all the electricity. So local people were cooperating. When this happens, when there is this lack of ownership of the people, disillusionment, and they think that they have been abandoned to such miscreants, then that becomes a problem. So now the government of Pakistan essentially and state of Pakistan has cleaned up these areas, and because of that you can see that there is a lot of peace already, but then there has to be development. And through that, of course, these tribal elders, the younger tribal elders, the new ones, will be able to find traction and they will be able to function further. But then you also mentioned earlier, the National Action Plan. So let me remind everybody that all these documents, while we have a national security policy and we also have this National Action Plan, these documents actually need to be revised every now and then. We haven't seen the national security policy being revised after 2019, and we haven't seen National Action Plan being revised after 2021. There are many developments that have taken place in the intervening period. There was a negotiation, a failed attempt to negotiate with TTP and mainstreaming them, and then we abandoned that, and because of that we had this blowback. So we need to revise that also, how to tackle these elements. Once that is done, we will be in a better situation. But finally, one more thing, you have to appreciate the modus operandi of your enemy, especially India. India, first of all, tries to flood the zone with all the negative propaganda. Their social media, there are many accounts which pretend to be Pakistani, but they are not, and they divide us on the socio-political lines. And then there are always this element or this percentage of useful idiots in any society that can be actually taken hostage and they can be exploited. So any effort like fighting terrorism, fighting insurgency or any such thing, that can be very quickly politicized, because Pakistan has a history of civil military relationship issues. Pakistan also has an economic issue. Pakistan also has inter-provincial history, right? So anybody can exploit that, and then in the end the state finds that its own people might be so confused by such elements that you cannot fight back. So what we need is a coherent new policy to ensure that India, especially when it is in a phase of pain like it is right now, and I think it is going to increase in coming days, it cannot externalize those conflicts to us, and it cannot drag us into this kind of rut.
Right, Faisal, with reference to, of course, what the local people want, I want your take also in terms of whether or not the tribal elders feel satisfied on this matter, but also in terms of what the local response forces are feeling, or what needs to be done to equip them, because most often than not, of course, we have these intelligence-based operations, but it is our police forces as well who are responding, who are, of course, staying at the checkposts, or who are making sure that there is security within the cities and within the provinces. And so what needs to be done in order to support these local entities as well when it comes to counterterrorism efforts?
Yes, and obviously when we talk about how the border is being secured, and of course the bordering areas, within the bordering areas there are of course pickets of police, pickets of FC, all of them, they have been utilizing the traditional ways of securing and traditional way of warfare. But now I think it's a different ball game. We know that Pakistan has the capability. Pakistan has applied that on the Eastern Front when war was taking place with India. May 2025 is a perfect example that Pakistan is capable of course, employing at a larger number the tech that is required for surveillance, as well as for of course carrying out any remote activity. And that needs to be of course employed in there. If we talk about the kind of posts we have more than 1400 posts, but the border is so long with Afghanistan that of course it requires a huge number of employment of the forces. And at the same time, rather than employing more forces in there, I think the surveillance can be conducted through the TAC, through the drones, and that could be a very efficient way of doing it. When it comes to all of these terrorists getting into, because of course they know which are the safest routes, and time and again of course security forces, they make sure that that can be countered, but still they have multiple ways to enter in, and I think that can only be made secure along with the weaponized drones. Wherever needed, them drones can of course create an activity, and I think this is the way forward. And the local when we talk about the Jirga people, of course they know that it is necessary, and even they are sick and tired of these presences of miscreants, because not only they are endangering their life, because Pakistan military forces, armed forces, they are very cautious about how to react to all of these miscreants, because they place themselves very close to and somewhere within the population, and that actually makes it very hard for security forces. That's why they rely on IBOs, intelligence based operations, and on a smaller stage level. That needs to be, of course, increased. But when it comes to the Jirga people, they are obviously highlighting this aspect as well, that Taliban, the local Taliban, they are not only involved in the extortion, they are also involved in the kidnappings, they are also involved in getting funds from the local businesses and simply ringing them and telling them the threatening calls to, of course, if they are not paying them, then of course there will be consequences that could be faced by them. But overall, the situation can be handled very perfectly with the advent and with the involvement of tech that was used on the eastern border, that needs to be employed on the western border as well. And at the same time, when we talk about TTA sitting in there in Kabul, we know that there are different factions, there are different divides within TTA. Them divides, we need to figure out which portion of TTA can be more effective if they are in touch and if they are to be sit with the Pakistani authorities. I would say people who are present in the bordering area, they need to be get in touch with, and they need to be, of course, told that ultimately if Pakistan does want to do activities like Pakistan did last year in December and in March, air raids were conducted, then there will be a collateral damage, and Pakistan doesn't want to do that, and they should be extending a helping hand in terms of ground intelligence to Pakistan, and wherever they point out, of course, that can be conducted by Pakistan, and that's the way forward. And I think people sitting in Kabul, they need to figure out what kind of relations they want to have with Islamabad. And at the same time, when we know that the Western powers, they are shouting out loud that all of these outfits, including Majid Brigade now, they are considered, deemed as the terror organizations by the world. And if Pakistan goes out all in war against all of these miscreants, then nobody would be stopping Pakistan, and Pakistan has the capability to do it. Pakistan just doesn't want the collateral damage, and doesn't want it because on the both sides of the border there are people who are relative to each other, and that is being looked after by Pakistan's armed forces. But if required, of course, IBOs can always be a good option.
Right, and Farooq, you can add to that, but we also need to talk about, when we speak about the long-term engagement and investing in the people, it's not just the tribal elders, it's also the children that need to be educated, and the young generation that is coming up to understand what the dynamics are, and to make sure that they are also integrated within the mainstream system of the country, and that they are no less than any other citizens of Pakistan. And so I want your take on how is it that we're going to engage and delve deeper into what is being taught to these children.
Right, of course, and I think that on that count, our army and armed forces have really done a great job of creating the cadet colleges there and umpteen other educational institutions. I think that most of the places that I kept on visiting in the past 20 years, where education was taking place, and remember that there were many places where TTP actually came out, or these elements came out and threatened that education should not actually proceed. There you saw very active presence of army, and then there they ensured that kids can be educated and they were protected. That said, we need to actually build all the institutions, especially in the tribal areas. One problem that you have to appreciate, and you have to really, my heart goes out to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa particularly, is one tragedy with us, that since the start of war on terror, with the exception of one ANP government, we had governments in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa which were simpatico with the other side rather than this, our position, right? They seem to be actually, especially because Faisal actually pointed out the issue of extortion, and there are reports that there are lawmakers and ministers which are threatened by extortionists, and that continues, right? So there seems to be an element of Stockholm syndrome, and because of that, they don't seem to be actually investing in mainstreaming the people. Rather, they seem to be more invested in mainstreaming the elements that you are supposed to be actually fighting. So I hope that that stops, because otherwise it will become very difficult. Children and their education, of course, is important, but young people, youth, they also need access to good colleges, and that is not all. They need access to some kind of recreational activity, some kind of professional outlet as well. Their economy still seems to be based on smuggling or lack of it, and because of that, things actually go awry. I hope in coming days we actually find a solution for all these things. Last time I was in one of the Fatah's areas, particularly Waziristan. At that time, the army had actually created, because they hadn't actually handed over to the civilian administration. At that time, they had created these massive shop compounds or business compounds that were handed over to people, and they could do business. But whether they had the kind of resources, if you go to most of these areas, you see that internet is also a big problem. So all these issues have to be taken care of, and that can be done. Faisal keeps on talking about drones. I think we have better options. We have access to very good satellites, and we can introduce more, and they can permanently keep a watch on our borders, because now you have that kind of photography that can actually pick up anything that is crawling on the ground. So if we have that kind of oversight, we can ensure that no incursion takes place.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Farooq. Thank you, Faisal, for joining us and being part of the debate as always. That's all we have time for. We'll now see you tomorrow.